What's up? How you all doing? I'm sitting here thinking, I did a video a couple weeks ago, and it was talking about generational trauma, the things that we pass down from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. And I'm sitting here thinking, I remember growing up, being 12 years old, me and my brother, back in the olden days, they used to have these Hot Wheel cars. And not only that, when they had these Hot Wheel cars, they had on the couch, they had one armrest that was going all the way up to the shoulder, and another armrest was going on to our other shoulder of the couch. And I remember me and my brother, he had his cars and he would go up the armrest and go home to his family. And I would have an armrest and I would go home to my family. I would go home to a wife, and I had, a boy and a girl at the time. I had a good job, this on a make believe, but at 12 years old, I was thinking, I say, I'm going home to my wife. I'm going home to, a happy home. I'm going home to where there's so much love and so much stability there. I'm going home to that. And that was at 12 years old. I always viewed in my mind marriage as being something that is a fairy tale. Marriage, something that's being happy. Marriage, something that's being stable. And I'm not saying that all marriages and it's that way. Sometimes there's going to be sun, there's going to be dark, there's going to be light in a marriage, but you got to make sure that you stick with it, because that is what "to death do us part" is meant by sticking with it, even in the good and the bad times. But at 12 years old, I was, had the idea where I'm going home to a good marriage. And fast forward at 18 years old, I remember my parents being separated, my parents going through their divorce, how it affected me emotionally. Although I wasn't living with my parents at the time, I was living with my grandmother, my mother, as everybody called her that knew her. I was living with her, but even in the midst of living with my grandmother, when my parents went through their divorce, it left me a type of loneliness. It left me empty. It left me a type of confused and sad time. I remember the times when, as being, 8, 9, 10 years old, I remember those times when my parents was together. But now at 18 years old, they are divorced. They're going through their certain separations, as being apart from each other. And I knew that the feelings that it had when I was 18 years old, although I wasn't living with them, I knew that type of feeling. And I was thinking that, if it affect the parents, it affect my mother and father during that divorce, during that breakup, during that separation. Imagine how it felt on the kids, how it felt upon me and my siblings. I was the oldest, but even in the midst of that, it affected me and affected my siblings also, because, I remember the times riding up and down the street, my dad telling me this is how he felt after the divorce. I remember my mother telling me this is how she felt after divorce. My brothers couldn't handle it because my brothers was like 11 and 4 years old, so they really didn't understand the magnitude of the divorce, of the separation. But my parents was affected greatly because of the broken home, because of the divorce. And not only it affected them, it affected me and my sister as being the oldest kids. It affected us. And I was thinking, I say, if a divorce just affect the parents, then that is one thing. But when it affects the kids, when it affects their psyche, when it affects their emotional, when it affects their mental, they could sit back and say, I remember the time when my parents was together, how, we was happy, how we did things together. It affect the parents away and it affect the kids away. So you got to make sure that when you're going through your broken home, when you're going through the separation or divorce, you're not just doing that because of you, but you got to real and understand and realize that it is affecting the kids also. It is affecting them even the more because you are 40 years old, so you can adjust to some certain things that the kids is at 18, 17, 11, and 4 cannot even fathom in their mind of how to adjust, how to deal with the separation of your parents being not together. So you've got to make sure and understand that divorces, separations, being apart from each other is not only affecting you, but it's heavily so hard on the kids. It's heavily hard on, the kids as to how will I deal with my parents not being together. I remember I had a 10-year-old boy at the time, and he told me the feeling of me and his mother decided to separate and go our separate ways. He told me that type of feeling. And I want to let you all know that regardless of, your feelings, regardless of the menial thing that you're going through, you got to understand that divorces and separation is not just affecting you, but it's affecting your kids also. I'm not saying if something is domestic, domestic violence in the situation or infidelity, I'm not saying that, but some things that we leaving or we departing or we separating, it's nothing more than a menial thing that we can work through those things. But you've got to understand that those divorces and separation, those broken homes is affecting not only you, but it's evidently so hard on the kids. So if you're not just going to do it for you, but realize that your kids you have the idea of the kids being involved also. So whenever you're going through your issues, whenever you're going through your marital issues, whenever you're going through your times of relationship issues, got to realize and understand that it is not only affecting you, the decisions, but it's affecting your kids also. So make sure that your decision is made not just because of you, but because of your kids also, because you could be passing down hurt, you could be passing down trauma, you could be passing down so much pain to those kids, and so your kids, and your children. So you got to make sure that you, even in the midst of all of those things, that the feelings and those thoughts is not just because of how you feel, but you got to make sure you understand that you're not passing down any generational trauma and generational hurt and generational pain. So you got to understand that whatever you do, make sure that you are not just doing it because of you, but your kids is in view also. So until this time, next time, I want to say work on things that you can work on, and let God be the blesser and to be the sustainer of relationships and life. So until this time, next time, I want to say God bless you. God bless you. God bless you.